All right, today we start with Shemot, also known as Exodus, chapter 27, verse 9. Now, literally, the English would say, and do you court Mishkan, two sides south-southward, hangings to court, 6 from twisted 100 in cubit length to side the one. So we begin with the Ve'asita, and everybody by now knows what that is. That's from asa. Properly, it's to labor, to work about, to make, to produce by labor, to manufacture, to fabricate. Okay, so you got to make something. I think we get the idea by now. You guys feel like you know at least one Hebrew word? Just saying. All right, then the next word is et, which has no meaning. It just points to something. And so it's pointing to chazar, court, an enclosure, a place surrounded by a fence. A court, an enclosure before a building, especially before the holy tabernacle and temple, of course. The inner court, or court of the priests, the great court, a village, hamlet, country village, because they, had fence around them. All right, so then it's Hamishkan. So we're using the proper word. Remember, there's a proper name for the tabernacle, which is Mishkan, and they also call it Ohel, and that's the Hebrew word for tent, by the way. It's not a cuss word. So here we're using the proper name for it, and it's what you think of. It's the tabernacle that was in the wilderness. Then it says li fe'ot. That's literally to, T-O, side, to the side. And we know what the side is. It's the side of a house, the side of a car, your side is your rib, that sort of thing. Then it says Negev. Negev is the Hebrew word that's used for south. It's the southern quarter, the southern boundary, used of the south country. It's to the south. Then it says Te Mana, which is southward, southward. It means the same thing. But anyway, so it's Ke Laim is your next word. It's the word for hangings, a sling, a veil, a sail of a ship, to sail or to navigate for some reason. I guess they're using that in the things that you hang things on. And it says Lechatzer. So we've talked about the hangings of the temple itself, the things that hang, the curtains in the front of the door, the curtains in front of the Holy Holies, and that sort of thing. But now we're talking about basically the fence that goes around the outside. Wow, I didn't bring my model in here to show it to you, but think of it as just a fence that went around this place. And it's a pretty good sized fence too, by the way. So Le Hatzer. So that's the court. So you've got the hanging, or the fence, if you will, that's going around the court. It creates a court in front of, on the sides, and even behind the tabernacle itself, because you've fenced it in. So it's an enclosure surrounded by a fence, that sort of thing. Then it says shesh, which is a Hebrew word for 6, but it also is the word for fine. No, it's not. It's the word for linen. Shesh means linen in this case, not 6. Then it's, because I have mine marked incorrectly. But then the next word is ma'shezar. Literally, that's from twisted. And remember, now it's saying linen twisted, which is idiomatic for fine linen. So if it's twisted, and it's, the tighter you twist it, the more fine it's going to become, but also the stronger it's going to become. But this is the idea for a fine linen. Then it says me'ah. Well, that's a Hebrew word for 100. 100 ve'amah. So there you have in cubit, the width is 100 cubits, right? It is in singular. But think about that in Hebrew. In English, we absolutely have to say it either in singular or in plural. And in Hebrew, they don't really do that. This is written in the singular, but they are speaking of the plural because it's 100 cubits in our thinking, right? Though it says 100 cubit. There's no mystery there. You don't need gematria or some numerology to say, oh, see, there's this great hidden secret. No, it's just the way they talk. They say it in singular. We think of it in plural. It's no big deal. Then the next word is orech. So you have 100 cubits in length. Then it says la pe'ah. That's literally to to side. So it's 100 in length to the side. And in this case, we're talking about the southern southwest side will be 100 cubits. So your cubit is, we're guessing, nobody knows beyond any shadow of a doubt, but it's going to be about 18 inches per cubit. So you multiply that times 100, and now you know the length. Of course, again, you can't be exact because nobody knows exactly what a cubit really is. But anyway, that's what it means. So it says ha echat. So it's the side. Literally, this is the one on the one side. They've already told you that the one side in this case is the south side. Then that's the end of it. So your translation becomes, and you shall make the court of the Mishkan on the southern side southward of fine linen, the hangings of the court of fine linen, 100 cubits in length to the one side, or to the south side. You could put the word south in place of one because it's already mandating that it's the south side. Rashi pointed out that Onkelos used the same word, ke-lime, or hangings, in this verse for grating in verse 4. He then concluded that the hangings had holes in them. In other words, the curtains were made like grates. If he is correct, the curtains could have looked much like modern-day chain-link fencing. It would still have created a barrier and would have been much less susceptible to wind, if you think about it. Rashi further stated that the hangings were suspended from the post like the sails of a ship hanging from a mast. Because nobody knows for sure, since the text doesn't give us any particular detail on this. What does that mean? Does that mean, oh my God, we can't ever build a replica because we can't ever possibly know? You know, will we go to hell if we try to build one since we probably will do it wrong? No, it's nothing like that. If God wasn't being specific about it, then he obviously didn't care. Build it however you want to build it. If you want to hang it like the way the mast of a ship is hung, then that's fine. If you want to do it some other way, that's fine. The order is that you build a fence around it. That's all it, and you're using this fine linen. And that's beyond that, that's everything else is just artistic license. It's not life and death. It's not heaven and hell. Rashbam wrote that the hangings had designs woven into them. Of course, that could be a problem, right? However, his assessment cannot be correct if Rashi is to be believed. And frankly, I think Rashi's going to be right. Think about what this would be like if you're using a solid piece of material and the wind kicks up. It's just going to be loud and the wind busting against that. And they're always going to be trying to sail off because basically you're hanging a sail, right? But if you make it a checkered work, and it is the Hebrew word for checkered work, or checkered might not be the right word, but think of it as a chain link fence. You've got the lines that are going this way and the lines that are going that way. And so you're basically going to have these little square holes in it. If you have that, then the wind can pass right through it, and you're not going to have near the resistance, and you're not going to have the noise and all that other stuff that's going to come with it. Frankly, I think Rashi's right, and it adds up, given that that's the Hebrew word that's used. I think Rashbam is completely wrong, because where would you have, I don't know, I suppose you could in some way have some sort of a design woven into it. I mean, I'm thinking, of course, of lions and tigers and bears, oh my, like what you see in the temple. But I guess if by design he means, red, purple, crimson, blue lines or something, that Maybe you could call that a design. Maybe that's what he meant. I don't know. Contrary to popular belief, I wasn't around when Rashi was around. Okay, verse 10. Literally, it would say, and pillars his, or its pillars, 20, and bases there, 20 brass, hooks, well, the 20 bases, and this is brass hooks, the pillars and clasps, they are silver. So you know that the hooks are brass, the pillars and clasps are of silver. So it's actually kind of straightforward. But it starts off Be'a Mudaiv, and pillars, literally that's his, but the his here is the pillars of the fence. So its pillars and its pillars. It's a column, it's a pillar. And again, I've said this a number of times, but this could be a post. We think of pillars, at least I do, especially when you use the word column. You know, I think of the Roman columns made out of marble and all that stuff. Well, that'd be kind of hard to move around in the desert, first off. And, you know, so the columns and the pillars, they don't necessarily have to be round. They could be square, certainly. And they did have flat planks. I mean, that would have been very labor intensive to make a flat plank. But they had them. They had them before this time period. This was not something new. But they didn't have saw blades that could cut through and make these perfect cuts. This had to be, you know, chiseled out some way. I don't know how they did it, but I know they did it. Because if anyone's ever seen King Tut's tomb and the boxes that they were put in, you know that those are built out of flat boards. And those things are right around this time period, you know, actually a little bit before this time period. So there you have it. You know that they had them. So they could have had square columns, but honestly, I think they would have been trees that where you've trimmed off all the limbs, you know, the nice straight up and down ones. They did have cedars, and cedars tend to grow nice and straight. So probably that's what it was, I'm guessing. But again, I'm guessing. Then it says Esrim, which is the word 20 in Hebrew. So it's going to have 20 of those. And this is Ve Adnehem, and their bases, their foundation, the pedestal that this thing is going to set in. Because remember, this is not permanent. They're not going to go dig a hole and drop the post in there and fill it with cement. This thing had to be moved. So they had pedestals that these things sat in. And then again, it says Esrim. So you have 20 posts and 20 pedestals. Then it says Nechoshet. Okay, those would be of brass or copper. I don't know what the difference. I think brass is made of copper and something else, two alloys or something like that, and copper is just a single alloy. But for some reason, when you start looking at these dictionaries and lexicons from the 1800s, go to the 17, the 1600s, they all talk about brass and copper being the same thing. So I don't know what to tell you on that. I don't honestly know if it's brass or copper. I don't, because, well, I just explained the because. So then it says Vave. So that's Vav is a hook. And you might recognize that from the alphabet, right? That's one of the letters. It's the sixth letter of the Hebrew alphabet, Vav. So if you want to say that in plural, you say Vave. So those are your hooks. And that's what a Vav is. It's a hook. Then it says Ha'amudim, the pillars, the columns, the hooks that go on the pillars, Vachashukehem, and their clasp, the joins, the things that pull these things together, Kasef, of silver. All right, so your translation is pretty simple. And 20 pillars and bases, the pillars, hooks of brass, and its clasp of silver. Rashi wrote that the posts were 5 cubits apart. He said that the sockets rested on the ground and the posts were connected to them. So the socket, what I call that? Base. The base of it. What's another word for that? I said it a while ago. It's the thing that goes at the bottom of a column.
Socket? They call it a socket.
Yeah, they're calling it a socket. I don't know why I can't think of the word. That's a bummer. But anyway, the thing that post is going to set on, or maybe even set in. Maybe you've drilled it out so you can set it down inside this thing. I'm sorry, I can't think of what it is. Anyways, he's coming up with this idea. Well, there's 100 different ways to add all of this up, and nobody knows what it is, but they're using the math. If the things, the fencing, I can't think of what that's called now. If the fencing is a certain number of cubits long, then you pretty much know that your posts are going to be so far apart, right? So he's just using simple math. But what you don't know is how far, the rope that would have gone in through it to hold it in place. You don't know how wide that would have been. Is it a cubit on each side, a half a cubit on each side, a quarter of a cubit on each side? So this is still just a guess, if you follow what I'm saying. There's no way to be exact here. And again, if it needed to be exact, the details would have been there. This is do it your way. God's not telling you exactly how it's supposed to be done. Let your artisan decide. Let them decide what looks right and what's, well, we want it to be more symmetrical, or we want it to be, whatever we want it to be. Let your artisans just make those decisions. All right, so verse 11. And thus, to side north, and also, and accordingly, if you will, to side north, or to the north side, in length, hangings 100, length and pillars it's 20, and bases there 20, brass hooks the pillars, and clasps they silver. Now we've already had all of these words, so what are they doing? Well, they've just told you what they want on the south side. Now they're going to tell you what they want on the north side, and both sides are going to be exactly the same length and everything, right? So, but we'll go through it. It says vechen, which is and thus, or accordingly, and also lefeot. That's T-O, two sides. So we've talked about the south side. This is going to then be followed up with zaphon, the north side. So now they say side north, we say north side, right? But it's the same thing. So now he's basically saying right there and then that he could have stopped right there and we would have known, make it just like the other side. But then it says ba orech, the length, with the length, or in the length, ket laim, the hangings, they were talking about them being hung like a sail of a ship, the hangings, the things that I'm saying, think of a chain link, a checkered pattern, if you will, with the holes in it. The length of those hangings, me'ah. Do you remember that? 100. Orech, the length, ve'amudaiv, and the pillars, so it's just saying the length is 100 cubits. And then it says, and the pillars, those columns, those most likely just wooden posts, esrim, they're going to be 20 on this side. The adnehem, and their bases, their foundation, their pedestal. That's the word I was trying to think of. The pedestal, the thing at the bottom of the column. So he's saying there's 20 of those. And then it says esrim, 20. That's 20 of those. Nechoshet. That's the word for brass or copper, whatever, tickles our fancy. I don't know which one. The hooks, ha'amudim, the pillars that go on the hooks, v'chashukehem, and their clasp, kasef, of silver. So again, it's going to be identical. So it says, and accordingly, to the north side, the hangings will be 100 cubits in length, and its pillars and bases will be 20, and the pillars' hooks of brass, and its clasp of silver. So it's almost the same verse, isn't it? Okay. So we have plenty of time. We can move on to 12. And with the court to side C, hangings 50 cubit pillars there, 10, and bases there, 10. Pretty simple stuff. The rochav, the width, the breadth, the width. You know, there's a width and a length, a height. We're talking about the width. It says, so it's width, and it's width, ha zer, the width of the court, the area that's surrounded. So we've got the length now. So now we're going to turn the other way and do, to line these up, the width, because we're talking about the fence that goes around it, making the enclosure. So this, the width of the court, the enclosure, le fe'ot, to the side. But now it's going to say yam, the sea. The Yamasuf, the reed sea. It's a sea. It's used of a lake. Properly, it denotes the boiling and foaming of the sea. So it really is talking of the sea. But they did use this to describe the Nile and the Euphrates because there was a lot of rapids and stuff. And so there was the boiling and the foaming, if you will. But that's where the idea comes from. And then it says, Ke'la'im, of the hangings, Chamishim, 50. So you've got the length is 100, and now it's going to be the width is 50 amma, 50 cubits. And again, this is in singular, but think of it in plural. Amudehem. Now that's its pillars, because you got to have pillars on this side. Asara, 10. So you had 20 on the north, 20 on the south. Now you're going to have 10 on the sea. I think I forgot to tell you something. Yeah, the sea is to the west. The western quarter from the Mediterranean Sea, being situated to the northwest of Israel. So the west, you got to go west, young man, to get to the sea if you're in Israel. Because if you go to the east, that's not going to take you there. Well, it will if you go long enough. You'll eventually find the sea. But you know what I'm saying. So that's why they use the word for sea for the word west. I meant to say that a while ago and just passed right over that. I did say, okay, so we're now have established that there are going to be 10 posts. Then ve'adnehem, that's and bases, their pedestals, asara, 10. So 10 posts and 10 bases, 10 pedestals. Which would make sense, right? Why do you need 11 if you only have 10 posts? Just saying. So the translation is, and the width of the court to the west, to the sea, to the west side, to the west side, the hangings 50 cubits with 10 pillars and 10 bases. So it's pretty simple. It's going to be 20 long, 10 wide. But it didn't say anything about the east side, did it? I'm guessing that verse 13 will do that. And with the court to side eastward east, 50 cubits. All right, so it's the rochav and the width. We've already had this word. Hechazer of the court, the enclosure, the thing that will be created through fencing it off. Li fe'ot, that's the to, to the side. Kedma, eastward, that which is before, the east, the eastern quarter, used of time, ancient time, time of old, used even of eternity, of that at least which has no beginning. I can't think of an example for you on that one, but the east, this word is, we'll just stick with east for now. Yeah, misracha, because it said east, eastward. This word, misracha, the rising of the sun, always, however, used of the east. So this word, misracha, is what I was thinking of a while ago. It's like, wait a minute. that literally means rising sun. So let's see, what's that one? So shall they fear him from the rising sun and from the sea, right? Because the rising sun is so shall they fear him from the east and from the west. So that's literally what's being said. But the rising sun means east and the sea means west. Okay. So we have Hamishim, that's 50 Amah cubits. The translation then is, and the width of the court on the east side eastward, 50 cubits. Pretty simple stuff. All right. Verse 14, and 15, that's how they say 15. We'd say 15, they say and 15. Cubit hangings to shoulder pillars there, 3, and bases there, 3. So it's va chamesh and 5. Esrei, that's the teen. So 15. So it's and 15, amah, and 15 cubits, ke'la'im, the hangings. So you got 15 cubits of the hangings. This is going to make more sense here in a minute. That's that checkerboard fence thing. La katef, to shoulder. It's applied to inanimate things as the side of a building, of the sea, the shoulder of the sea, of the city and the country. The shoulder pieces of the high priest's dress, you know, they use it of that. The sides of a gate, in other words, spaces at each side of a gate, that's called the shoulders. Then it says amudehem, pillars, it's pillars. So it's saying that the sides of the gates, the pillars at the sides of the gates, shelosha, 3, ve'adnehem, and their bases, shelosha, 3. So verse 14, and it makes more sense with the next verse. And the hangings at the side are 15 cubits, 3 pillars and 3 bases. Now, what are we talking about, Rob? I promise it's going to make sense. Then it says in verse 15, literally in English, and to shoulder the second 15 hangings pillar, there 3, and bases, there 3. So it's essentially the same thing. Vela katef and to shoulder. That's that thing they use it of each side of the gate. So one shoulder, there's 3. And now we're saying the second shoulder, ha-sheni, the second. Chemesh, that's 5, esrei, 15. Kaleim, the hangings, umadehem, that go between the pillars, shelosha, that's 3. Ve'adnehem, and their pedestals, shelosha, 3. So it's, and the hangings at the other side, the second side, are 15. 3 pillars and 3 bases, 3 pedestals. Still not making sense? Well, this one ought to clear it up. In English it says, and to gate the court, covering 20 cubit, violet and purple and scarlet, crimson and fine from twisted, or that's linen from twisted. Sorry, I keep doing that backwards. Made of needlework, pillars there 4, and bases there 4. So what have they done? They've brought part of your fencing in from this way. They've brought the other part in from that way, and now we're going to put a gate between them. This is all on the eastern side, right? Yeah. All right. So we start off with ule sha'ar, and to gate. A gate, whether of a camp or of a city or of a temple or of a palace. The gates of a land are the entrances of the land. So we actually could call it an entrance, but in this case, it's really a gate. And it's what you think of. There's all kinds of stuff that it says about this word, but this is all we're really talking about here is this gate, this entrance. Then it said, of the court. This is not the entrance of the tabernacle. We've already gone over that, but now we're at the entrance of the court. He-chatzer, of the court. That's the enclosure that's being made by this fence. Masach, those the covering. And again, that this one will probably be of that same sort of thing, that same graded work, because you're still going to have a wind issue. You know, basically your gate's going to be like a sail trying to blow away every time the wind blows. Maybe not so much. The wind doesn't really blow all that much. Yeah, it blows directly from the north and the south, right? So eastward probably not so much, but you know it does. You know that wind moves in every direction. So maybe it wouldn't be as big of a deal, but it's still at times going to be a big deal. So those holes in it are going to be an important part of it, I think. I agree with Rashi on that one. So we talked about the covering. Esrim, so it's 20 amah, 20 cubits. So you had the 15 and the 15, which is 30. And you got the 20 in the middle. 20 plus 30 is 50 cubits in width. Then it says techelet. That's the word for violet. It's from that shellfish, that cobalt color. This is the actual color. I don't know if you guys can see that very well or not. Can you see it? But that's actually from that mussel. That's literally the color. Now, when I got it, it was a darker blue, but it's fading over time, and I haven't had it that long. What, maybe a year on this one? I guess this one's probably time for an upgrade. I think I upgrade them about once a year. Yeah, I do, because I get a new one every Passover. Okay, so anyway, the next word is ve'argaman, that's the purple, the reddish purple color. Vetolaat, that's the scarlet color, and then shani, which is the crimson color. Then it says veshesh, and remember, that's the number 6 in Hebrew, but it is also used for the word linen. So we have linen. Then it says mashazar, that's the twisted, from twisted literally. So it's fine linen. The word twisted means that it's fine because it's idiomatic. Then it says ma'aseh. Now that's to make something. That which anyone makes. It's a deed that somebody does. It's the work of an artisan. Then it says rokem. So in this case, it's a needlework. Then it's amudehem. Those are the pillars. Arba, 4. So there's going to be 4 pillars for this one. The ad nehem, and bases arba, 4. So your translation is, and the covering for the gate of the court will be 20 cubits long, made from a needlework of fine linen, violet, purple, scarlet, and crimson, with 4 pillars and 4 pedestals, or 4 bases. Kasuto wrote, the shape of the court was thus rectangular, 100 cubit long and 50 cubit wide, and the total number of the pillars was 60. Each of the 4 pillars at the 4 corners is, of course, counted only once in the aggregate, although actually it served both adjacent sides insofar as it was necessary to complete the number of spaces between the pillars, in order that there should be, for example, 20 intervals of 5 cubits each between the pillars. 21 pillars are needed, but the last pillar also serves as the first of the adjoining side, and so on, right around until we reach again the first side at which we started. The first pillar of each side serving as the last pillar of the preceding side. Thus, in practice, 60 pillars suffice exactly for 60 spaces. In this way is to be understood the arrangement of the pillars of the screen of the court gate, which the exegetes have needlessly found difficult. On the east side there are 15 cubits of hangings on the right-hand side, 15 cubits of hangings on the left, and 20 cubits of the screen in the middle. All this requires 10 spaces of 5 cubits each between the pillars. and hence 11 pillars. If we take into account the 10 pillars mentioned in the text as belonging to this side, 3 plus 4 plus 3, and the pillars at one of the corners, which was already counted with the pillars of one of the longer sides, we arrive precisely at 11. It is not to be deduced, therefore, that on account of this screen will not be in the middle. On the contrary, it will definitely be in the center. The 15 cubits of hangings at the one shoulder, which require 3 interspaces and 4 pillars, are suspended on the right 3 pillars, and on the first pillar of the screen, which needs 4 intervals and 5 pillars, blah, 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 yak, yak, yak. All he's saying is the number that is given by the Bible is correct, because what the exegetes wind up doing is they're trying to say, okay, so there's this many down here and there's this many over here, and somehow they wind up needing 4 extra posts, and it's just ridiculous. There's no reason for 4 extra posts. God knew what he was doing. His math is correct. That's all that's really being said here. But I also wanted to add something else that I really thought I would have said, but I didn't. Recall that the hanging that went over the entrance of the tabernacle itself and the hanging that went before the Holy Holies is all of these same exact colors, the same exact material. So the entrance to the gate basically matches the entrance to the outer curtain and the entrance to the inner curtain. It's all made of the same stuff, same colors. Okay, verse 17. All columns, the court round about from joiners, silver, and hooks there, silver, and bases there, brass. All right, so the first word is kol. It's totality. It's all of them. Every one of them. Don't leave anything out here. Mude, all of the columns. It's a pillar. It's a post. It's probably just a cut down cedar tree. But all of those posts, hechazer, that go around that court, saviv, that go around, mehu shakim, from joiners, properly to join together, to adhere, to cleave to anyone, in other words, to be attached with very great love, just to be attached. Kesef. So do you remember this from earlier when we were talking about the dowels, the square dowels that they used in this time? It's saying that the dowels need to be made of silver, because you're going to have to join the post to that pedestal. I don't know why I'm having trouble with that word, but the post of the pedestal. Remember, I said maybe they carved it out and stuck it down in there. Well, they may have, but you still are going to have something to keep it steady. And so basically God's saying you're going to use dowels, and when you do, they need to be made of silver, because they're going to be used over and over again, and wood expands and contracts with the weather and with the rain and stuff like that, and that can be a problem. If you use the silver, it's not going to do that. So it can be used over and over without it being destroyed. All right, anyway, that's my guess there. Vavehim, because the text doesn't say why, it just says that that's what you'll do. Vavehim, and here the vav, vave, vavs, so their hook, the hem is there. So their hooks, kasef, are going to be made of silver. The adnei hem, and that's that pedestal, the bases, nechoshet. So there's your brass or copper. It's going to be made of whatever that is. So here's your translation. All the columns round about the court will have silver dowels and hooks, and their bases of brass. That's pretty simple. Pretty pricey, but pretty simple as far as the translation. All right, so verse 18. Boy, I'm slamming through these today. Length the court 100 in cubit, and width 50 in 50, and height 5 measures, linen from twisted, and bases they're brass. So it's kind of a sum up, but we are adding something else to it. Orech, the length, hechatzer, the length of the court or the enclosure, me'ah, there's your word for 100, va'ama, that's the word for with the cubits, so it's 100 in cubit, ve'rochav, and there's your word for width, hamishim, 50, ba'hamishim, in 50, so it's 50 and 50. The koma, and the height. This is the new word. Ve koma. Ve being and, koma being height. It's used of the height of a man. It means tallness. The height of the cedars. The height of the ship. The height of Noah's Ark. It's the height. Chamesh, 5. Amot, 5 cubits. There are 5 measurements. Then it says shesh. Remember, that's the word for 6, or linen. For the word linen. Ma shazar. And that's from twisted, so it's fine linen. They say linen fine, we say fine linen. Then it says ve'ad nehem, and the bases, the pedestal, nechoshet. That's the brass or the copper. The length of the court will be 100 cubits, and the width will be 50 from end to end. 50 in 50. That's idiomatic for 50 from end to end. And the height will be 5 cubits of fine linen, and their bases of brass. It makes it much easier to understand when you know what the idioms are, doesn't it? All right, so verse 19. To all articles mishkan, in all service it, and all stake its, and all stake its the court brass. All right, so we're going to introduce a new word here. Lechol, that's that word kol, that's all totality. So everything, kele, all of the articles, whatever is made, the utensils, the vessels, everything that's going to be used for the making of this tabernacle. Ha mishkan, the making of the tabernacle. Bechol, or with all or in all. Avodato. Eved is servant. Avad, service. So all, in all service, in all of its service. Vechol, and all yete dotai. The stakes. This is the word for nail or pins. It's think of when you're putting up a stake. When you're putting up a tent, don't you have to have a big tent? You see them when they put up those tents. They have those big old stakes that they take a sledgehammer, or to use the proper rabbinic word, sludge hammer. Well, actually, it'd be sludge hanglometer. That's how I say it. A sledgehammer, and you bang them into the ground to tighten up the ropes and stuff, you know, to hold the tent up. That's what they're calling a stake. So it's not like a steak from a cow. Then it says vechol, and all yitdot. That's that same word. All of the stakes, all of the thingies that you hammer in. Hechatzer, the court. That's the enclosure. Nechoshet, those will be, all of the stakes are going to be made of brass. Brass is stronger than copper, right? I think we can settle this issue at this point, because I don't think copper would hold up to this. You start banging on copper, even if it's a big old thick piece of copper, what's going to happen? It's just going to be all smooshed up. Brass is going to be hard enough to hold up to this kind of thing. But brass, this was that age, that time period. So brass was probably, yeah, because iron was brand new. This was the very, very, very beginning edge of the Iron Age, right? That's what they call it, the Iron Age?
I know there's.
Yeah, the Iron Age. So, because remember, Cassuto, just a week or two ago, I pointed out that Cassuto said that was still a novelty. Nobody really thought that much about it, and not everybody knew about it either. So this is just the very tip of the Iron Age. So brass would have been their strongest metal at the time. Okay, so our translation: all the instruments of the Mishkan in all its service, all of its, the Mishkan, all of the its here is Mishkan, all of its tent stakes, and all the tent stakes of the court of brass. So you've got the stakes that are going to hold down the top of the tent itself, the tabernacle, and then you're going to have stakes that'll hold the post in place that hold up your fence. Because remember, they're not digging holes and pouring cement here, because that didn't exactly exist in that time. You didn't have post hole diggers, and you didn't have cement, so they're not doing that. And besides, they got to get up and move. They're not going to just leave a fence sitting there, and move on and build a new one. This is all portable because they know they're moving it. So these things have to be, the fence posts literally have to be tied down with rope. And so that's why you're using the fence stake. So it's talking about the stakes that go for the Mishkan itself and the stakes that go for the posts for the fence around the Mishkan. Rashi, Ibn Ezra, and the Sepharno all agree that the instruments included everything needed for erecting and dismantling the tabernacle, which I'm in agreement with as well. Kasuto wrote, the Torah does not state in which part of the court's area the tabernacle was to be placed. So it doesn't. We don't know, does it go back toward the west? Is it over here toward the east and turn that way? Well, we know it's not, because we know the front has to face the east. But you don't actually know at what place the tabernacle goes. Most people assume that it's going to be toward the back. And some think, well, wouldn't it be in the center? And others think, well, why not put it at the front? We don't actually know. So anyway, if we were to assume the principle of Shemitic symmetry, the prevailing theory would appear to be correct, namely that the entrance of the tabernacle was located on the line dividing the length of the court into two equal parts. There was an area 50 cubits long in front of the tabernacle and 50 cubits from there in the other direction, allowing 30 cubits for the length of the tabernacle and 20 behind it. There was also a space of 20 cubits on both sides, south and north, between the tabernacle and the hangings. If this was so, the ark was situated exactly in the center of the western half of the court, and the altar possibly was placed in the middle of the eastern half, but there is not the slightest indication of all this in the text. So maybe he's right, maybe he's wrong. That's what he's telling you. Well, this is what my guess is, but I don't know. And that's pretty much what everybody's guess is. They're just making it, symmetry. They're just making it all fit and look pretty. What? Symmetrical. Yeah, I guess that's the word I'm really looking for. There was something I was thinking I should add here, and now I've already forgotten what it was. Back up just a second and see if it's something that really ought to be in here, if I can think of it again. Oh, darn. No, I'm sorry, I've forgotten what it was. Yeah, they'll probably come up again later. Okay. I should have jumped on that. I just don't know. Okay. Yeah, we have time. Let's do verse 20. There's only, 21 verses in this. I guess we'll go ahead and finish up. Verse 20. And you shall command children of Israel, and he take they to you oil olive pure, beaten to from light, to make a sand lamp continually. Yeah, if you read that a couple of times, it just almost makes sense like that. Ve'ata, and you. Now, who's he talking to? He's speaking to Moshe. So and you, Moshe, te zabeh, you'll command, you'll constitute, you'll appoint, you'll decree, you'll make this determination. You'll cause it to exist. So it's pointing at something. B'nai. So you're going to command the children. That's that word that's used of children, both male and female, because it's really the word for children. It's often translated as sons, because when you talk about Aharon's children, he only had sons, so it'll be written out as sons. Or even if he had daughters, it's really not that. It's the daughters weren't counted in this time period. Women just didn't count. They didn't have women's lib, and they didn't burn their bras and stuff like that back then. Women weren't counted. When they did a count, they counted the men and the boys, but they did not count women. So if they said there were 5,000 people there could have been 15, 20, 30,000 people there, because they only counted the men, the males, I should say. So anyway, this really is for the word of children, but it's often just translated as sons. Not so much because the man didn't have daughters, as it is in some cases, but just because the women were not counted. So it says the children, if you will, Yisrael, that's Israel. Then it says Ve'yikhu, and he take they, so they're going to take something, Eleha, so they're going to take, or in this case, remember, to come is to go, and to go is to come. It's the same thing. And so to take is to bring. There is no difference in their mind. It's the same word. So let's think of it as bring for the sake of our English minds that can't wrap our heads around that. So they're going to bring Eleha, to you, shemen, oil. It's for the word of fat, because it's like if you think of the whale blubber used to be used to light oil lamps and stuff like that. Anyway, so this is fat, and this is the fat of zayit, of the olive. There's fat in an olive. This is zach, of pure, so it's got to be pure olive. Katit, beaten, pure beaten olive oil. This is la ma'or, that's to from light. So it's to create light, la ha'olot, to make that light ascend, to make that light go up. It's really not like the idea of smoke going up. This is the word they use for that when they're talking about incense or sacrifice. It's from the idea of the smoke going up. But they're talking about the light itself, doing this, if you will. Then it says ner, that's the word for lamp. We don't have one handy here, do we? You guys have seen in the pictures, it's round with the little spout on the end. It has the hole in the top, and they used to first you had to take those because they're made out of sand, and you get them wet with water, and then you put the oil in it, and you put a wick in there, and you light the wick, and it makes the light go up from the lamp, right? I hope you guys know what a lamp is from that time period. Then it says tamid, it's continual, so God wants that light to go up continually. The translation, and you shall command the children of Israel to bring to you pure beaten olive oil, to make the light of the lamp to ascend continually. Ibn Ezra points out that the text now switches its focus from the tabernacle and its implements to those who serve in the tabernacle and their service. So at this point, we're switching gears. The verse 21. Literally it says, in tent appointed times, from outside to curtain, that upon the testimony he arranged with he, Aharon, and sons his, and children his, from evening to morning, to faces Yahweh, statute eternal to generations them, from children Yisrael. So we have Bet Ohel, so in the tabernacle. Now we're calling it by its technical name rather than its proper name. But we're still talking about the tabernacle in the wilderness. Moed, which means appointed time. So it's the tent of meetings, the tent of appointed times, the tabernacle. Michutz, from outside, properly it's a wall, it's especially the outside, whatever is without, whatever's outside. La parochet, so outside the curtain, outside the veil. Asher, it means that, T-H-A-T, or you can use the word which, W-H-I-C-H. That's what asher is. Then it says all in Hebrew, which means upon or above. Ha-edut, the testimony. Ya'oroch, which is he arranged, to set in a row, to put in order. Otot, with it. Aharon, so Aharon is going to arrange it. He's going to set it in order. Basically, he's going to come back and light it. And see to it that the thing is lit all the time, is what they're saying. Uvanav, and his children. And by the way, this particular job can be done by women. The only job that the Bible, basically forbids a woman is being the actual high priest. In this particular job here, since it's outside the curtain, can be done by a regular priest and not just the high priest. And so when he's talking about Aharon and his children, it's the descendants of Aharon are the priest. It's the priestly family. So this is to be done by the priestly family, if you know what I'm saying. It is not restricting this to men only. Then it says me'erev, from evening, ad, to boker, morning. So that ought to tell you, it says that it's burning continually, right? But now we're starting to see that burning continually does not mean 24 hours a day. It's saying it burns continually from the evening to the morning. Right? Because that's, by lighting those oil lamps, that's how they turn the light on at night. I'm just saying. Then it says lipnei, which literally means to the faces. Then it's going to say Yahweh, to the faces Yahweh. So you remember, this is idiomatic, so it's in the presence of or before God. Then it says hukat. This will be a statute. This will be established. It's going to be an ordinance, olam, eternally. This is supposed to be going on eternally. This is never supposed to stop. And by the way, there are those who say we cannot do certain things because there is no tabernacle and there are no priests. There's no temple and there are no priests. Either way. Wait a minute. There was no tabernacle. There was no temple. There were no priests when this order was given. In fact, all of the law was given before any of this happened. This didn't happen after it was all done. It happened before. So God gave this command before any of this stuff was ever even instituted. And they could have said, oh, well, God, we can't ever do any of this stuff because none of that stuff exists. I just hope you get what I'm going to there. Anyway, so then it says, let dorotam, to the generations, age to age. It's eternally. It passes down from family member to family member. Then it says me'et, which literally is and then appointing. Benay, to the children, their children, and the children's children of Yisrael. This will never be passed over to the Christians when the Jews get kicked out and God takes them, right? This is going down to Yisrael, to the Bnei Yisrael forever. All right, so your translation then is, in the tent of meetings, outside the veil, which is above the testimony, Aharon and his sons, in other words, the priests, will arrange from evening to morning in the presence of Yahweh an eternal statute to their generations for the children of Israel. So this concludes our journey through chapter 27. Shalom v'shalom, y'all.